There is a strange contradiction taking place in modern society. Never before have men had access to so much information about confidence, relationships, success, discipline, and self improvement. Every day, millions of young men are exposed to advice promising to reveal the secrets of attraction, power, and purpose. And yet, despite this endless stream of information, many men feel more confused, isolated, and uncertain about their identity than ever before. This raises an uncomfortable question. What if some of the content claiming to liberate men is actually reinforcing the very insecurities it promises to solve? What if the modern man has entered a psychological maze where the search for strength becomes another form of dependence? This is the paradox of the modern manosphere, a movement that often begins with a legitimate concern: men struggling with purpose, loneliness, confidence, and identity, but can sometimes transform those struggles into a worldview built around resentment, suspicion, and fear. To understand why it has such influence, we need to look beyond social media personalities and examine something deeper: the human mind itself. The rise of the manosphere did not happen in a vacuum. It emerged during a period where many traditional ideas about masculinity have become uncertain. Many men have grown up without clear examples of what adulthood, responsibility, and masculine identity should look like. When a person feels lost, they naturally search for explanations. The psychologist Carl Jung understood this part of human nature. He argued that every individual contains unconscious aspects of themselves, what he called the shadow. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves that we avoid confronting. For example, our insecurities, our envy, our fear of rejection, our feelings of being less than others. Young famously wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it faith." The meaning behind this is profound. If we do not examine our own psychology, we can become controlled by emotions and desires that we do not fully understand. We may believe we are making rational choices, when in reality, we are simply reacting to wounds we have never confronted. This is where certain aspects of the manosphere become psychologically powerful. Instead of encouraging someone to ask, "Why do I feel powerless?" or "What part of myself needs to develop?" some communities offer a much simpler explanation. They tell men that their struggles are not the result of complex psychological, social, or personal factors. Instead, they provide an external enemy. The problem becomes women, society, modern culture, or some hidden force preventing men from succeeding. And psychologically, this explanation is attractive because uncertainty is painful. A complicated truth requires self reflection. A simple enemy provides emotional comfort. This connects closely with the ideas of Friedrich Nietzsche, who spent much of his philosophy examining human weakness, resentment, and the desire to escape personal responsibility. Nietzsche introduced the concept of resentment, a deep psychological resentment that develops when a person feels powerless but cannot accept that feeling. Rather than transforming themselves, they create a story where their suffering proves that they are superior. The person no longer thinks, "I have weaknesses that I need to overcome. Instead, they think, my weaknesses exist because the world is against me. Nietzsche's message was not that people should become ruthless or dominate others. His argument was that genuine strength begins when a person has the courage to confront reality without needing comforting illusions. The strongest individual is not the person who never experiences failure. It is the person who can look honestly at themselves and use that knowledge as the foundation for growth. This is also why the modern attention economy creates such fertile ground for certain online personalities. Many influencers have discovered that the strongest emotions are often the most profitable ones. For example, fear creates attention, anger creates engagement, insecurity creates customers. A person who tells you you are lost because everyone else has lied to you, but I have the answer, immediately creates a powerful psychological relationship. They position themselves as the person who can reveal the truth and offer the escape. But there is a contradiction here. If someone's entire business model depends on keeping you convinced that you are incomplete, then are they really helping you become independent? Or are they simply creating another system for you to depend on? The person believes they have escaped the matrix, but they may have only exchanged one set of beliefs for another. The prison has changed. The psychological dependence remains. To understand why this happens, we can also look at the work of Sigmund Freud. Freud believed that human beings often create psychological defenses to protect themselves from uncomfortable emotions. Sometimes we do not consciously admit what we feel because the truth is painful. A person might say, I don't need anyone's approval, but underneath that statement may exist a fear of rejection. A person might say, I do not care what people think of me, but underneath that may be a fear of not being respected. The problem is not experiencing these emotions. Every human being experiences insecurity. The problem begins when we refuse to examine them, because the emotions we refuse to understand do not disappear. They simply control us from the background. A man who cannot face his own vulnerability is not free from weakness. He is controlled by it. This idea leads us naturally to the philosophy of Albert Camus. Camus explored what it means to live in a world where meaning is not automatically provided. Human beings want certainty. We want a clear explanation of who we are, what our purpose is, and what our place in the world should be. But life does not always provide those answers. Camus called this struggle the absurd. The challenge of being human is accepting uncertainty while still choosing to create meaning. And this is where genuine masculinity begins. Not through pretending to have no weaknesses, not through adopting an internet identity, but through the difficult process of becoming responsible for your own life. A real man is not someone who has convinced himself he is superior. A real man is someone who has developed enough self awareness that he no longer needs to prove it. So, what does authentic masculinity actually look like? It is not domination, because someone who always needs to prove their power is usually controlled by insecurity. And it is not emotional suppression, because a person who cannot understand their emotions becomes a prisoner to them. And it certainly is not the endless pursuit of status, because if your entire identity depends on external validation, then you have handed control of yourself to the outside world. Instead, masculinity is built on responsibility. The responsibility to develop yourself, the responsibility to protect what matters, the responsibility to control your impulses rather than being controlled by them. Strength is not the absence of emotion. Strength is the ability to understand emotion and act wisely despite it. The reason the Manosphere is so appealing is because it offers something that every human being desires: a simple answer to a complicated life. But understanding begins when we realize that simple answers are not always true answers. The modern world contains countless forces competing for our attention and shaping our beliefs, from data designed to keep us engaged, to influencers whose income depends on maintaining an audience, to ideologies that promise certainty in an uncertain world. The challenge is not to escape society completely. The challenge is to become psychologically independent within it, to develop the ability to question ideas, including the ideas that make us feel powerful. Because sometimes the beliefs that feel most empowering are the beliefs that prevent us from growing. The ultimate escape from the manosphere matrix is not finding a new group to follow. It is learning how to think for yourself. Nietzsche believed the highest goal was not becoming a copy of someone else, but becoming who you truly are. And that's not a follower, that's not a victim, that's not a product of someone else's worldview, but it's a person who has faced himself honestly and chosen his own path. And that right there is the real foundation of strength.